Hello everyone, my name is Jaughna Darning and today I'm here to talk about June King McFee, her life, and her impact on the world of art education. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about her life. She was born June 3rd, 1917 in Seattle, Washington. She stated that her physical environment while growing up, referring to the surrounding nature, impacted her as an artist. She's the daughter of Cleo Preston King and Betty King. Her mother's passion of music and creativity and her study in metaphysics and idealism influenced June greatly. McFee attended elementary school, which she described to be dreary and the education was restrictive. In junior high, she was first introduced to painting. After school hours, she would take private lessons from Northwestern painter Guy Anderson. Here she learned the fine art of painting diffuse light onto a canvas. She was able to visit the Seattle Art Museum when it opened, and the art within influenced her style of painting. At 14 years old, McFee won a blue ribbon at the State Fair for one of her paintings. She stated this made art seem more important to her. During this time, McFee was intrigued with planes and the science and technology behind them. She would draw aircrafts and their parts as a way of feeling more connected to the art of flying. During her school career, she was influenced by many teachers. Her art teacher encouraged individual expression. Her geography teacher instilled within her an interest in other countries and cultures. And her geometry teacher introduced her to the beauty of mathematical forms. McFee attended Whitman College, which was a small liberal arts school. Her Greek and Latin professor made her realize that she had a love of history, and her physics professor introduced her to the relationships of known forces and vectors. At the end of her sophomore year, she took a painting class with Alexander Archipenko at the University of Washington. He was considered a renowned international sculptor who she described as very soft-spoken. He did not say much to her, except he gave her the advice of, "Don't ever paint like that again." McFee had been trying too hard to conform to the painting techniques of those around her. Archipenko taught her to turn away from the outside pressure of conformity and learn to value her own responses. One of her paintings was accepted into the Northwest Artists Show. She convinced her parents to let her go to Chicago to study with a group of students under the teachings of Archipenko. The program was rigorous. McFee said she had to attend studio from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day, which did not leave her much time for a social life. After a time, her parents requested that she return home to Washington to finish college. She was expected to return to what they called a normal life. She still studied painting, and she took a class under the instruction of French purist Amédée Ozenfant, who was the opposite of Archipenko. McFee described him as being a demanding, technical perfectionist. Having experienced such differences in teaching methods, McFee realized that the way things are taught is as important as what is being taught. Her parents sent her off to Secretariat College so that she could learn to support herself. She left the school because she was taught not to have an opinion, and she stated her objections in a public outburst. She married Malcolm McFee, who she said had the same stereotypical expectations placed on him by his parents, which for him was to work at a good company. She participated in the Boeing Company experiment, which was a production project to see if a group of people could be trained in 6 months to be production illustrators. They were charged with the responsibility of reading blueprints and drawing 3D instructions of how airplane parts are assembled. This was designed for the builders and manufacturers that could not read. Around this time, she began to teach art. Her first student was a war survivor who was able to express his feelings and experiences on canvas. June and her husband tried to start a family, but they lost their first child. Then she gave birth to June King McFee, and she stated that these experiences intensified her concern for life. She began to work a lot in the art education field and spread her services throughout her community. She decided that she found teaching more rewarding than just creating art. She attended Central Washington College, where she received one of the first community college teaching certificates. She was taught art and media concepts and was introduced to psychology. It was here that she became fascinated with the linkage between art and psychology. Her work at Stanford while pursuing her education degree led her to the first phase of her perception delineation theory. She studied educational psychology, sociology, anthropology, philosophy, curriculum studies, statistics, and research methodology. She failed the first time she took her comprehensive exams. She realized that she had to approach the work differently, and when she took them a second time, she passed with one of the highest grades of the year. She took 3 years to write her preparation for art book, which included her interests in psychology of perception, creativity, early studies of cognitive style, anthropology, and the effect of culture on human behavior. All of this as it relates to teaching art. She spent the next 5 years teaching at Stanford University. Then she and her family studied the culture of the Blackfeet Indians, and they learned the profound respect that this culture had for human dignity. McFee's husband was an anthropologist, and his work had a great impact on her and her teaching methods. She started lecturing and conducting workshops where she met a lot of other art educators and saw new programs in each place that she went. She met such influential people as Victor Lowenfeld and Mildred Fairchild. McFee and her family moved to Arizona due to a tentative job offer. Though she did not get the job, she found it a good opportunity to spend time with her family and her son especially, and to explore their new environment. She also used this time to accept lecture assignments from universities all over the country. This allowed her to gain knowledge of how complex and diverse American society is. She turned her focus to deprived areas in an effort to see more of what art education had to offer people in different areas. She helped the teachers in Phoenix work with the diverse people that lived there. These studies were the first in-depth analysis of conditions of poverty and racial and economic discrimination, and what its effects on school children in urban settings are. She wanted to make art teachers aware of the value differences between them and the children they were trying to teach. McFee attended the 1965 Penn State seminar. This seminar was a highlight in the development of art education. McFee received a teaching job at the University of Oregon, where she stayed for the remainder of her career. The school was mainly for architecture, but she believed architecture helped make people have better decisions about the built environment. She developed an Institute for Community Art Studies and was given a huge grant by her university to do this. She started an environmental design curriculum and a doctoral program in art education. Then she became president of the Pacific Art Association. She also became co-editor and then editor of Studies in Art Education. She was also on the board of the NAEA, or the National Art Education Association. The Women's Caucus of the NAEA established the McFee Award in 1975, which is a high honor to receive. McFee used her vacations and sabbaticals to travel overseas to study other cultures. This included living in London for 6 months. She studied the impact of comparing body language, use of space, relations to others, and the design of public spaces. She saw cities as collective organismic art forms built out of complex values of people who build and use them. McFee was a keynote speaker at the INSEE World Conference in Australia. This conference was held for people who were still using her book, Preparation for Art, in South America and in Europe. She received the School of Fine Arts Achievement Award in 1981. She also received the NAEA Distinguished Service Award in 1983. Now I'm going to show you a list of her major works. She was very busy, as you could see. Sometimes she would work on multiple pieces of writings per year. Now I'm going to talk about June McFee's teaching methods. She believed that cultural and economic differences among people clearly influence their exposure to art and their ability to respond to it, that the need for art as a basic communication skill in education became more apparent. The relationships between environmental design and the cultural meaning of art took on major significance. She considered herself as a translator, one who attempts to bridge the gap between art and education by relating information from the social and behavioral sciences to both art and education. She believed there is a need for art education reformation, that there is a need to rekindle our interest in and understanding of the complex foundation upon which art education rests. She said educators need to be aware of trends, assumptions, and use of techniques, that we need to be made aware of the underlying ideas of contemporary trends in art education and how these trends relate to past assumptions. We need to know that the character of current philosophical and political assumptions and how they are shaping the future of art education in American schools. We also need to become more familiar with the use and analysis of contemporary computer-assisted research. She said that we are in need of textbooks that relate research and practice. McFee also said art teachers need to welcome diversity. Educators need to understand not only art education and art, but the beliefs and values held by people in their community that are manifested in their schools. She believed in four foundation areas in art education: the function of art culture, child development in art, the creative process, and the various theories of child art. She believed the art curriculum needs to relate to the selection of objectives. The learning experiences must be organized. She recognized that there are problems in evaluation sometimes. She believed that a child's attitude is influenced by the culture in which he or she lives, and that the perception changes as the child grows. She also believed any single human ability is at least partially influenced by the other abilities. I will now go more into depth on McFee's famous perception delineation theory. It is a framework composed of four components that interact in the process of perceiving and making. The first of these four components is the psychosocial readiness of the individual. The second is the particular environment in which the individual finds himself or herself when the perceptions in question occur. The third is the individual's ability to handle perceptual data. The fourth is the individual's ability to confer aesthetic order to material. This framework is a useful scheme for classifying some of the factors that affect human behavior in the arts. She conceives that these components function simultaneously rather than in stages, and lays proper emphasis on the diversity of conditions that affect the quality and character of children's artwork. McFee acknowledges other theories of perception in her works. Among them is the theory of naive realism, which holds that there is no difference between the object perceived and the perception. This means that the inability to draw is essentially a problem of muscle control or manual skill development. A second theory she uses is children draw what they know, not what they see. A third theory is by Victor Lowenfeld that states differences in perception exist as a result of genetic differences. A fourth theory is a product of Gestalt and Rudolf Arnheim, which states children do not draw what they know, but rather what they see. McFee focused a lot on how art, culture, and the environment work together. She believed that art could be used as the humanizing force in improving the quality of life on this earth. This cannot be done in an individualized basis alone, but must be done through concern for others. She believed there are trends we can identify that are quite clearly predictable, such as we are all going to have to live in less space and share our space and our resources with more people. We are going to have to design our space with less use of the world's resources. We are going to have to be able to design for the common good and still maintain the uniqueness of individuals and groups. We are going to have to design for the processes of changing environments and lifestyles as we adjust in our resources. We may no longer be able to indulge in the luxury of art for its own sake. We must be equally concerned with art for humanity's sake. And we can no longer afford the luxury of the old assumption that if children play with a wide assortment of materials long enough, they can't help but coming up with a novel idea. This is because of the diminishing of resources. She believed in the preparation for interdependence with the needs of others in mind, that the effects of one set of private decisions affect the quality of life of many other people. As teachers, we need to ask ourselves, do we encourage students to create art with a concept for its impact on others? Do we encourage designing with other people's needs in mind? Do we help them develop the capacity to make a unique environment for themselves that does not destroy the unique environment of their neighbors? She states, we are faced with the difficulty of preserving independence so necessary for the democratic processes to survive in an urban situation where interdependence is a basic ingredient of urban survival. She said education in values and in the effects of form, light, color, and space as they relate to the use of the environment needs to be part of education of everyone who is going to live in a highly interdependent urban society. McFee believed in a curriculum that understands the environment, that will help students understand the city from a use of space, quality of space point of view. The first concept she taught was studying value conflicts. The artist-teacher role must change to meet the demand for art education that prepares students to deal effectively with the inseparable use-look relationships in the city so that they can take responsibility for their contributions to the shared environment of the highly interdependent urban scene. Next is studying how space is used, from a chair to a busy sidewalk. studying how changing the shape, size, light, or color of a space affects how space is used, studying how changing the use of space makes it function better for some purposes, studying how the use and look of space affect each other and changing one or the other to see how it works. Studying the sizes and the symbols in a space can make the space workable. What do the symbols in a space tell us about what people value? What do litter and disrepair tell us? What do fences do? What do they say? Children can learn to be more aware of the spaces they use at school, and therefore slum children can learn why their neighborhoods are as they are, but they can also learn the tools for self-help in modifying their environment. The third is studying networks, or the space around the main object, like roads, sidewalks, and paths. Art teachers must help them reflect on how these networks affect their experiences they have, how they affect the lives of people who live along the networks, and how some networks are designed to make places exciting or monotonous. Too often, we consider the quality of specific places and things, and not the effect of the spaces between things or the experiences we have going around, in, through, or between. McFee felt that nature plays a major role in the design of cities. She stated that relationships between the man-made and the natural environment must be studied. The form of the land changes the form of a city. For example, if a city is built on a river or in the mountains. She believed the use of foliage is important. Students can look at trees and shrubs and see how well they divide or enhance the space in relationship to how the space is used. Students need to understand that the natural environment is still present in a city, though it is modified by it. An area of study is the design for process, not design for final solutions. A classroom that is used for different kinds of activities throughout the day is a good place to study process and change. Students can study ways to allow for all activities, all the storage, and all the display, so one class's use of the room won't interfere with another class's choices and work. They can devise a better working social pattern, so all the parts will work together for the most good for all the students and the teachers who use the room. Students will learn to relate qualitative judgments to social, physical needs. Art won't seem so separate from life and life from art. These are things McFee considered when she developed a curriculum. She believed the teacher's task is to select modules of interactions that children can use. In 2D design, they can explore how changing a form, size, shape, or color affects how it looks with other forms. They can see how it changes by being more distant from us, how the light reflects off of it. They can explore the kinds of emotional feelings they get from different combinations of form, line, color, light, and etc., and how these transact with each other in giving us a whole experience. She also states understanding the ways we make order out of confusion or create variety and monotony, and how this can give young people tools for environmental problem solving.